Picture this: massive waves crash over the deck of a groaning ship as 276 terrified souls cling to whatever they can find. Lightning illuminates the Mediterranean's fury, while a chained prisoner becomes the voice of hope in humanity's darkest hour. This is the story of Paul's final voyage, a journey that would take him from Caesarea to Rome around 60 AD. Paul wasn't traveling as a tourist or missionary. He was a prisoner, appealing his case to Caesar after spending 2 years in Roman custody. Yet even in chains, God had plans that would transform this treacherous voyage into one of history's most remarkable testimonies of faith. The journey began peacefully enough. Julius, a Roman centurion, showed Paul unusual kindness, allowing him to visit friends in Sidon. Paul's companions Luke and Aristarchus joined him, turning this prison transfer into an opportunity for ministry. They sailed along the coasts of Cyprus and Asia Minor, but as autumn approached, the Mediterranean became increasingly dangerous. At fair havens in Crete, Paul warned the ship's officers about continuing. Acts 27:10 records his prophetic words, "Men, I perceive that this voyage will end with disaster and much loss, not only of the cargo and ship, but also our lives." But the centurion trusted the ship's pilot and owner over Paul's divine insight. They decided to reach Phoenix, a better harbor for winter. That decision nearly cost everyone their lives. A violent northeaster called Euroclydon struck with devastating force. For 14 days, the ship was driven helplessly across the Mediterranean. The crew threw cargo overboard, then the ship's tackle. They couldn't see sun or stars for navigation. All hope seemed lost, but Paul had received another divine message. Standing before his fellow passengers, he declared, "Last night an angel of the God to whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me and said, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you.'" Paul's faith transformed him from prisoner to leader, from liability to lifeline. As they approached land near Malta, the sailors tried to escape in the ship's boat. Paul warned Julius that everyone must stay together to survive. The centurion cut the ropes, trusting Paul's judgment completely. When morning came, they ran the ship aground on a sandbar. The bow stuck fast while the stern broke apart from pounding waves. The soldiers wanted to kill the prisoners to prevent escape, but Julius protected Paul and the others. Acts 27:44 tells us that everyone reached shore safely, some on planks and some on parts of the ship. Paul's prophecy proved accurate. Not one life was lost. On Malta, Paul's ministry continued in remarkable ways. While gathering firewood, a viper bit his hand. The islanders expected him to swell up and die, thinking he must be a murderer facing divine justice. When nothing happened, they decided he was a god. Paul used this miracle to demonstrate God's power and protection. Publius, Malta's chief official, welcomed them. When his father lay sick with fever and dysentery, Paul prayed and healed him. Word spread quickly, and Acts 28:9 records that all the other sick people on the island came and were healed. For 3 months, Paul ministered to the Maltese people, turning a shipwreck into a spiritual harvest. When sailing season resumed, they boarded another ship bound for Rome. Paul's reputation had grown so much that the Maltese loaded them with provisions and honored them greatly. They sailed to Syracuse, then Rhegium, and finally Puteoli, where Paul found Christian brothers who invited them to stay 7 days. As they approached Rome, believers came out to meet Paul at a pit forum and 3 inns. Acts 28:15 says Paul thanked God and took courage when he saw them. Even as a prisoner, he had become a source of encouragement to the Roman Church. In Rome, Paul was allowed to live by himself with a soldier guard. He immediately called together local Jewish leaders, explaining his situation and preaching about Jesus. Some believed, others rejected his message, But Paul continued teaching with all boldness and without hindrance for 2 years. This Mediterranean voyage reveals how God works through circumstances beyond our control. Paul's chains couldn't stop his ministry. Storms couldn't sink God's purposes. Prison couldn't silence the gospel. Paul's faith under pressure, his leadership in crisis, and his continued ministry, despite opposition, demonstrate that God's plans prevail regardless of human obstacles. The voyage that began as Paul's journey to trial became his platform for testimony, proving that even our most challenging circumstances can become opportunities for God's glory.